Obviously we suffer guilt, shame, fear. That's what's instilled in most survivors and victims of childhood abuse.
Safeguarding children and young people, I mean, it's changed. The threat has morphed and changed. And whilst, people will probably blame the increase on technology, it's really, still comes back to people. And in the online world, they can engage with 20 or 30 children, in a very short period of time. So the threat from a child protection point of view has most definitely increased.
Well, mate, no point in going anywhere. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Don't start the car, Steve, you'll get yourself into more trouble. Just turn it off, you can talk to us. Nobody's going to hurt you. Nobody's going to hurt you. Steve,
Don't drive off.
Nobody's going to hurt you.
Don't drive off, we just need to talk to you.
You're under a citizen's arrest, section 24A. We're allowed to hold you here till the police get here.
Can't let me go, please.
Police are on the way.
Let me go, please.
Police are on the way, Steve.
Look,
nobody's going to hurt you. Nobody's going to hurt you.
I've been framed up.
You're under a citizen's arrest, section 24A, until the police arrive. We're allowed to hold you here with reasonable force.
I want to go.
You're not going anywhere.
The aim of every parent is to keep their child safe, and no threat is more terrifying than the idea of a sexual predator targeting your son or daughter. Once, you only had to protect your children from visible threats, but as the online world develops, so do the threats lurking in the shadows. Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, and chat rooms. A generation of children socialising through screens. But you can never know for sure who is on the other side of that screen. However, the police are no longer alone in the fight against online groomers. These are the Paedophile Hunters, over 75 groups dedicated to tracking down predators and bringing them to justice.
Well, you haven't been speaking to a child that we know of. You've been speaking to a decoy. So we're online child enforcers, and basically we monitor online activity for people like yourself talking to children. Okay, we intercept those conversations. Okay, and then you start talking to us, people like us. Okay, and so we're the ones that get your dirtiness on the internet. Okay, all right, your filth. Okay, and then when people like you come and arrange to meet a child, we turn up. Do you think you're going to get your wicked way with a child?
No, not at all.
And you get confronted by 6, 7, 8 people.
The Guardian Angels are a large hunter team set up in late 2017 and are fully committed to putting as many groomers behind bars as possible. In the 5 months they have been active, the evidence they have provided has led to 6 convictions, with 35 more pending. I spoke to Nath, who wishes to keep his identity hidden, in order to gain an understanding of the process it takes to catch a paedophile.
Our decoys sit on adult dating apps with their profile picture as a child, and they sit and wait to be approached. At the point they're approached by somebody, they make it clear their age, and that gives the person then a chance to say, you shouldn't be here, or I can't talk to you, and block them. At that point, if they carry on chatting, and the decoy will go along, they'll not entrap them, repeatedly tell them their age, and they'll go along with that. And once we've reached a certain criteria, it'll then get handed to the team leaders, who will arrange the sting.
So I'm going to ask you again, what you're doing here today?
Come up here to meet someone.
Who have you come to meet today?
A girl called Jessica.
A girl called Jessica. And how old is Jessica?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
No.
Really? Even though she tells you right there how old she is?
Right.
And loads more through these chats.
Yeah.
I mean, it says a lot on these chats.
Right.
And she tells you how old she is.
Right.
In fact, so much so, You told her that if anyone asks, you're her uncle.
From early on in the conversation, Darren makes it clear that Jessica's age is not a problem for him. He goes on to ask her whether she has a boyfriend before giving her his number. "Will I get into trouble?" Jessica asks. "No," he replies.
So you admit that you're here today to see a 14-year-old child?
That doesn't mean that I was going to do anything at all.
Would you like me to move on to the bits where you said you were?
Actions, my darling, yeah? Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. And you're here right now, aren't you?
Well,
your actions are speaking in volumes to me.
Hold up.
You've just told me actions speak louder than words. These are words. This is an action.
After they exchange numbers, Darren's grooming begins. He asks whether the two of them can be boyfriend and girlfriend. "I've got my own place. You'll be okay. Be more adventurous. Explore a little. Trust me."
So this child was supposed to be staying at your house tonight.
No, I wouldn't have had her stay. I wouldn't have had her stay. That for definite.
Okay.
Because it says it in that doesn't mean I would have done.
What are you bringing with you? I've got pillows. Are you okay with sharing the bed? A double bed?
Yeah, I've got a settee, so I wouldn't have.
I don't mind. I will. You've just asked if you'd share the bed. You said share the bed.
I know, but that doesn't mean. It doesn't mean I would have been in the bed with her.
Who's she sharing a bed with then?
Well, she would have been sharing it on her own, because I wouldn't have been in it.
That's not sharing, that's sleeping on her own. Come on now, let's not get silly.
I'm
All right.
getting silly.
A variety of hunter groups have told me that the fake profiles that they set up can often attract groomers within minutes. I put this down to an exaggeration, but then I decided to create a decoy profile of my own. It was 10 seconds before I received my first message and another minute before my second came through. Within 2 days, I had close to 100. I used the hunter's methods, explaining to the men that I was only 15 years old, stressing this fact as much as I could. A huge majority continued the conversation, showing immediate signs of grooming and often messages of a sexual nature. One user told me that the young age was important for him, before sending me an explicit image and disgusting descriptions of what he was doing. The sexual language didn't stop there, as the messages continued to roll in. But perhaps the more disturbing messages were those in between the filth. "I could be your dad. Don't tell your parents." The subtle grooming towards who they believe is a 15-year-old girl is scary, and on the scale I received it, it's terrifying. Age is just a mere number, one man claims. And perhaps the worst of all, good age to be trained to become a good submissive. The issue of online grooming suddenly became very real for me. However, the grave nature of the crimes committed by those caught by these paedophile hunters should not distract from the motives behind the hunters' work. According to NoBullying.com, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually assaulted in some way before their 18th birthday. I spoke with Ian McFadgen, a survivor of child sexual abuse and activist fighting for others like him to be heard. I wanted to find out what impact these groomers could have on a child's life.
My name's Ian McFadgen. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse, sexual and physical abuse. At a very young age, I was sent away by my parents to a boarding school down in southern England, where unfortunately there was a paedophile ring running and had been running decades before I attended the school. I remained at that school just up until before my 14th birthday, and the abuse continued. I was abused by several teachers there, and the abuse ranged from inappropriate touching all the way through to sodomy. I remained silent about my abuse for decades, for a variety of reasons, which are no stranger for most survivors of abuse. You know, we tend to keep our trauma to ourselves through a way of coping, really. You know, we suffer guilt, shame, fear, That's what's instilled in most survivors and victims of childhood abuse. I'm not here to criticise paedophile hunters, I'm not. But I also understand, and I'm quite clear, how difficult it is to get a case into court and how important the evidence is taken, stored and conveyed for a case to come forward which will be prosecutable. And what I don't want is, I don't want groups of people turning up like vigilantes, exposing people publicly and it going online without it actually following through, you know, the due diligence of a police investigation.
Despite Ian's worries about the so-called vigilantes, paedophile hunter evidence is being used more than ever. In 2016, a BBC Freedom of Information request revealed that hunters collected 44% of the evidence used in grooming trials. This was up 33% in 2 years. So are the hunters perfecting their work, and is this an argument to reinforce their legitimacy within a policing framework? I travelled to the Three Raymonds building in London to talk to Hugh Davies, a lawyer who has handled many grooming cases across his career. I want to know more about Hugh's background in grooming trials, as well as how current hunter groups can stay on the right side of the law.
A man called Jonathan Vi, who was married. I believe from memory he had children, but he was living out of London. And he set up a effectively false profile, claiming he was 23. He was actually mid-40s. And very quickly, and it's one of the features of this, dozens of teenage girls were responding to his false story that he'd act as a big brother to them. And before you knew it, he was travelling into London to meet what he thought was a 13-year-old girl, committing the offence of grooming.
And how did that case end? Was he caught before he could meet anyone, or...?
He was found on arrest to have a rather sinister collection of pornography featuring the rape of schoolgirls. So this was a very real case of grooming, where his future intention was as serious as it could have been.
So these paedophile hunter groups that have been set up in the last sort of 5-10 years, how do they get around entrapment law? How do they ensure that their cases aren't thrown out?
So the key problem for those groups is not finding people who respond to their invitations, it's ensuring that they preserve the whole evidence trail that's required to prove the elements of the offence.
Is that the only real way that they're likely to have their case thrown out, using these methods, just if they don't preserve the evidence?
As a matter of law, what they gather, if preserved, is admissible evidence, even if, which it isn't, is being obtained unlawfully.
So, if the hunter groups are keeping within legal boundaries, should they be seen as unpredictable vigilantes or potential assets to take advantage of? In a YouGov survey, 58% of the public said that the police should work with the hunters if it means catching more paedophiles, compared to the 25% who disagreed, with the rest saying I don't know. I contacted police organisations, both national and local, to gauge the opinion from a law enforcement point of view. I was sent a series of press releases. The Met explained that they do not work with vigilantes, arguing that it could interfere with police investigations. The National Crime Agency agrees with the Met's stance on the paedophile hunters. While we understand the public desire to protect children from online abuse, on balance, we do not recommend vigilante action, which can have severe consequences. What was more interesting was the response I received from Kent Police DCS Tom Richards. He told me that police time spent investigating incidents involving pretend children diverts from the actual abuse of children. No actual children have been harmed or found to be at risk from any of the people caught by vigilante stings in Kent. The chances of an actual child meeting someone they've met online is extremely low. So is the work of paedophile hunters a waste of time, and do these groups distract from preventing the actual abuse of children, or can they be trained to work in tandem with the police to crack down on online grooming? I met Jim Gamble, a former chief executive of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre and leading voice at the forefront of child protection. Jim has held several senior positions in child protection throughout his career, as well as working within the police. I want to get his take on the future of the relationship between hunters and police.
The police can't have it both ways, and I say this as having been a senior police officer myself. You can't have it on the one hand that no, this is a job, leave it to the police, and then this tsunami of offenders online being able to target our children at will, while you say, well, don't worry, there's other ways of doing it. Simon Bailey will say that they're arresting 400 a month. Well, first of all, that's arresting, not convicting. So there's a difficulty with that. But if you compare his other statistic that there are 100,000 IP addresses in the UK downloading indecent images at any given moment in time, then 400 arrests a month isn't that impressive. Ultimately, the fact of the matter is it's for the police, it's for the criminal justice infrastructure to waken up, grasp the opportunity and actually recruit this citizens' army, which for the first time would give us the chance to turn the tables on predators who go online, and they go online at the minute with no fear of capture.
So obviously you've been working in child protection over various different number of jobs over quite a few years now. Would you say that in the last 10 years child protection has come along quite a long way? Or
the threat from a child protection point of view has most definitely increased. Our resource capability has reduced. Government invests very little in policing, education or social care when it comes to making our children safer. So we've got two things happening, increased opportunity and therefore more children in more vulnerable circumstance, and the resources that you're going to rely upon to keep your children safe, well, they're fewer. There are 22,000 fewer police officers now than they were in 2012.
So with this increased opportunity and reduced manpower, is there any argument that these paedophile hunter groups are an asset that could be used, or are they something that should be immediately shut down?
Well, I think paedophile hunters teach us a lesson. What they teach us is that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do this. In fact, most people would be able to catch a predator online who's attempting to groom a child, and that's just a simple fact. Should we encourage vigilantism? No, we don't want anyone operating out with the law. Character is really important. Some of the vigilantes are really good people who are really well motivated and inspired to make a difference because of something that's happened to them or a friend. Others, I wouldn't let walk my dog.
They're going to be...
I've been nice to you, so shut up and stand there.
Perhaps the most famously controversial case is the brawl at Bluewater, in which a sting turned ugly after a heated disagreement. In this video, which went viral within days, the hunter team lost their cool and appeared to attack the alleged groomer.
No!
Such behaviour by amateur crime fighters has sparked controversy in the national newspapers. Right or wrong, heroes or villains, should the actions of a few condemn the more professional groups? Despite the number of headlines urging police to crack down on vigilante justice, the jury is still out on paedophile hunters. There are still many supporters for the groups who argue that police should be utilising their extra manpower to crack down on grooming. But is this idea of hunters and police working together a realistic scenario? And what do the police need to do to make it happen?
What police and crime commissioners should be doing is actually advertising jobs for volunteer special constables. We do that at the minute already. We have special constables across the country who aren't actual police officers, but they are recruited and trained and given a uniform, and they walk out on your street and make you feel safer because they're there. We need to take that concept and we need to transpose it into the online environment where you can come in on a Wednesday night and a Sunday morning and you be a digital detective online because you've been recruited, you've been vetted, which is key, psychologically assessed so that the work doesn't hurt you. And then, once you're trained, supported within a police infrastructure to actually capture the evidence in a way that doesn't represent a risk to you or anyone else. That's a win-win scenario.
Actions such as the brawl at Bluewater persuaded masked hunter the Phantom to get out of the game. I set up a meeting with the man behind the mask to find out why he left and if there's any hope that the police and volunteer paedophile hunters can reconcile their differences and learn to work together. Or has the damage been done by unprofessional groups in the eyes of the police?
If people like that are looking on the internet at hunter groups
Yeah.
See him charging round, see him standing there for half an hour just shouting and swearing at a bloke. They're going to think, what the fuck are these lot all about? Like, you know, it's just an embarrassment. That's what they would class it as, I think.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be impressed with the way it's done. It's like I say, you both need each other. The hunter groups can't present their evidence to the CPS. They need to go through the police.
Yeah.
And the police can't get the suspects without the evidence from the hunter group. In theory, what they should do is come together and work together and sort of get some kind of protocol up where they say, this is what we want you to do, this is what we'll ask you to do. And then the hunter groups can say what they'd expect from the police, get some kind of joint working agreement together.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's enough sort of understanding between both parties and appreciation of both parties to be able to come together and have that conversation in a civilised, sort of grown up, straight to the point, matter of fact way.
I decided to revisit my fake profile to see how the messages had developed in my absence. I stopped counting once I reached the 200th. Well over 200 messages full of explicit language, pictures and vile grooming. So will the police and hunter teams ever find a way to work together, or will they continue to fight online grooming separately? It still remains unclear, but what is clear is that the problem of online grooming is very real and ever growing.
Well, there's going to be, and there is, an uneasy tension between the police and these groups.
You told her the other day that you were in hospital having a suspected heart attack and then you disappeared. You blocked her and disappeared. That kid might have thought you were dead. You just don't care, do you?
What's that going to do to a child's mind?
Rather than actually being reactive around child protection, we need to be proactive. Abusers have progressed and moved on and are using the internet.
You hounded her for 2 months because you wanted a child to be your girlfriend, and you've got a girlfriend and kids in that house. It's not fair. You've ruined their life.
Part of the problem. It can't be about ego. It's got to be about children. And that means that the police need to step back and take what's good out of this, but prevent the ego and the self-publicising individual from becoming involved.
I mean, do you know what kind of damage this does to kids?
Yes.
If a 14-year-old girl had turned up today instead of me,
I can guess, yes.
it scars them for the rest of their life.